From the public, I have a positive. Okay. So, first of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so glad for being here, also only virtually. So, I have to share my. Okay. So this presentation focuses on the innovation occurred during the last kingdoms in Hellenistic Sparta, which means that of Areus I, who ruled between 309 and 265 BC, that of Cleomenes III, whose reign is comprised between 235 and 222 BC, and that of Nabis, who ruled between 207 and 194 BC. And particularly, this paper will deal with the political and the cultural aspects related to the introduction of the coinage in this period, despite the renowned and legendary ban by Lycurgus attested by ancient sources. So around the middle of the 3rd century BC, Sparta struggled with political and military weakness and a large amount of inner problems, furthermore threatened by the new power of the Achaean League. Nonetheless, the difficult historical period comprised between the Battle of Leuctra, occurred in 371 BC, which revealed the lost Spartan dominance in the Peloponnese, and the Battle of Sellasia, fought in 222 BC and concluded with the Macedonian Achaean victory. This period is marked by a reassessment in arts and culture parallel to the intermittent efforts to corroborate the Lacedaemonian hegemony. The aim of the last Spartan monarchs was to try to revive Sparta's former glory through a political maneuver, also resulted in the introduction of the first silver Spartan coinage. So the origin of the Spartan nomisma is still in doubt, as well as the origin of certain economic bands which contribute to the idealization of the image of Sparta as an anti-chromatistic society. This widely debated topic is extremely difficult to address. Therefore, in this context, only a brief summary of the whole issue will be provided. Archaeological evidences attest to the introduction of Spartan coinage minted in precious material, at least during the kingship of King Areus I, so in the middle of the 3rd century BC. On one side, this Spartan delay in monetary production is not unusual. First and foremost, Spartan economy was based on an agricultural archaic model. Secondly, it is attested that many poleis preferred to use foreign coinage, like the widespread Aeginetan silver coin and the Athenian one, rather than producing it on their own. On the other side, there was the spectrum of the ban of using foreign coinage dating back to Lycurgus. In the words of Plutarch, Lycurgus supposedly redistributed lands and likewise intended to equally divide all the contents of the houses, with the aim of creating equality. However, although he did not implement such a plan, he obtained the same equal result by banning coinage in precious material, namely gold and silver, replacing it with an iron currency, which resulted both in the consequent ban of foreign coinage and in a local low-value currency that made it impossible for the Spartans to engage in trade and thus to buy any luxuries. In addition, also Xenophon noticed that this local low-value currency made it impossible to acquire money by ingenious means because it was too heavy to ride. In any case, the holding of precious material coinage by the Spartan individuals was at this time made illegal. Although there is a thin boundary between real history and legendary history, as well as all the discussion concerning the Lycurgus and these affairs, the alleged ban of foreign coinage could not have been enacted in the 8th century BC or earlier, since the first silver coinage were not minted in the mainland Greece before the 6th century BC. Secondly, it is possible to assume that the Spartan numisma was produced at least after the Battle of Aegospotamius fought in 405 BC, and the victorious end of the war of the Peloponnese, to which followed a period of wealth and opulence in the polis, which resulted in the presence of a great quantity of precious metals, counteracted by a real unenforceable ban on private ownership of foreign coinage. In this context, in order to counteract the politics of Lysandros, who intended to bring foreign silver coins, the Spartan resorted to a traditional Spartan iron coinage, asserting that Lycurgus had banned foreign coinage. It is doubtful if the iron money was minted at that time. Moreover, it had a considerable weight and was maybe called pellanor. Considering its weight and the difficulty in transporting it, it is possible to assume that this Spartan coinage held only a nominal value rather than a real one. Coherently, Plutarch explains that these coins had a very important value at Sparta, but a really scarce one outside the boundaries of the city. So, despite the discussions about the use of foreign coinage and the traditional iron Spartan coins, the first known official Spartan coinage carries the name of King Areus I. For many years, Areus I has been described as the monarch who followed the Hellenistic model of ruling. Succeeding the events with Pyrrhus of Epirus, who was finally killed by Areus at Argos, the monarch managed to secure an alliance with the anti-Macedonian Ptolemy II and also a number of Greek states, Athens prominent among them, in a joint front against Macedonia as part of the Crimonidean War that was fought between 267 and 261 BC. Indeed, this increased Spartan importance in foreign affairs is attested by the decree of the Crimonides that is dated back to the same year of the war, which records the Athenians' alliance both with Ptolemy II Philadelphus and with the Spartans and their allies, who were already allied to Ptolemy II. Although the inscription mentions other Spartan officials and twice refers to the kings, Areus is the only Spartan honored with the specific mention of his name. Ptolemy II's contemporaneous dedication of a statue to Areus at Olympia similarly recognize and celebrate the Agiad Areus monarchy despite the presence of the reputed co-ruling Eudamilus II. In this context, King Areus introduced the monetary system, plausibly in order to finance the needs of the Crimonidean War, besides supporting his image of a powerful ruler. This first silver coinage included both silver tetradrachms minted on the Attic standard and modeled on Alexander the Great's issues, and also obols based on the Aeginetan standard with the same weight. Although the anti-Macedonian politics, the usage of the same standard of Alexander's coinage was formally justified by the fact that the recipients of these coins were foreign mercenaries, and this typology was the most acceptable currency of the period. Up to today, only 4 silver tetradrachms of Areus have been found. It is noteworthy that the reverse shows Zeus enthroned and carried the legend Basileus Areus. And this is too important because the legend names King Areus as the issuing authority and clearly imitate the coinage of Alexander's successors, with the title Basileus carrying dynastic connotation beyond the local significance of Spartan kingship. And at the same time, as in the decree of the Cremoniden, the other king, Eudamidas II, it is totally ignored, switching to an autocratic Hellenistic monarchy. In addition, the obverse of the tetradrachms represent the head of a youthful Heracles wearing the lion skin. The figure of Heracles, claimed as a mythical ancestor of both royal houses of Sparta, slowly came to substitute the traditional iconography of the Dioscuri, which for centuries had symbolized the repointed Aegean Spartan diarchy since archaic and classical period. Not only Heracles and his attributes became a fixture of Spartan coinage until the reign of Nabis, his iconography on coins corroborates the new image of Spartan monarchy from Areus first on as a new absolutistic one, modeled on the Greek Hellenistic kingship. In this regard, it is noteworthy that the coins of the 3rd century BC Sparta are either anonymous, bearing the generic legend of Helle or Lake, or issued in the name of a single king, and a few of the Hellenistic kings of Sparta minted them. By the 3rd century BC, the power of the Dioscuri as the model for the Spartan royalty par excellence had weakened. Their symbols on the bronzes of Cleomenes III and his successors, and later those of Nabis and his predecessors, were always complementary to those of Heracles. If Areus I was the first Hellenistic king introducing the coinage, Cleomenes III, besides introducing extensive social reforms previously mentioned by the other contributors, and extending his influence throughout the Peloponnese by force of arms, was the first monarch whose image was reproduced on coins, although his name is not in the legend, as you can see in the slide. The referring model, according to scholars, is the silver tetradrachm representing Antiochus I, minted a few decades before the reign of Cleomenes. It is noteworthy indeed that Cleomenes' father, Leonidas II, spent many years prior to his accession at the Seleucid court, trying to imitate the lifestyle of the Eastern monarchs, thus becoming unpopular at that time at Sparta. Nevertheless, this first coinage by Cleomenes showed the portrait of the monarch with the royal diadem on the obverse, likewise the portrait of Antiochus I and Antiochus II on Seleucid coins that circulated at Sparta at that time, although Plutarch credits him with a sober lifestyle, in contrast with this lascivious image on coins. Moreover, Cleomenes' relationships with the Eastern monarchs were not restricted to the Seleucid court. From the 20s of the 3rd century BC, Cleomenes' mercenary army was rewarded by Ptolemy III Euergetes. Again, this is reflected in Spartan coinage issued from 226 to 223 BC. These coins represented an eagle on the thunderbolt on the obverse and a winged thunderbolt on the reverse. It is noteworthy that both the eagle and the thunderbolt were used on the reverse of Ptolemaic coins. Therefore, it is possible to assume that the Spartan coinage of the period was another tribute to the Egyptian patron. In addition, a slightly under life-size portrait head of Ptolemy III in Parian marble found in Sparta may be dated to the same period, the 20s of the 3rd century BC. This was probably a private dedication that both attests the first sculpture in Parian marble found in Laconia post-dating the late archaic period, and may be the representation of the establishment of a Spartan civic cult of Ptolemy III, such as in Delphi and especially in Athens, where he was worshipped as an eponymous hero in the Agora. In the years succeeding the defeat of Cleomenes III at the Battle of Sellasia, the last austere king of Sparta, Nabis, following the previous monarch Areus I and Cleomenes III, reintroduced the figure of Heracles, both emulating Alexander, namely a manifesto of an Hellenistic monarchy, and dismissing once again the Dioscuri, symbol of the previous diarchy, as previously discussed. Nabis' coinage represented his portrait on the obverse and Heracles seated on the rock on the reverse. Nabis was thought to be the first Spartan ruler to reproduce a seated Heracles on coinage, with the right hand resting on the club and the left placed on the rock. The legend, as in the previous reign of Areus I, carries the inscription Basileus Nabis in Doric Greek. He called himself Basileus and claimed to be a descendant of Eurypontid king Demarautos, who ruled between the 6th and the 5th century BC. But both Livy and Polybius refer to him as a tyrant. However, the seated Heracles on the Spartan coins is not a statuary type. A through equivalent Heracles statue in Parian marble, whose head is now preserved in the Museum of Sparta, was commissioned at the same time, probably by Cleomenes III, following the iconography of the Lysipian one preserved in Taranto, representing Heracles cleaning the Augean stable, preserved through an acephaloscopy. More specifically, this iconography on coinage derives by a coin used in the mints of Antiochus I at Sardis or Smyrna and Magnesia at Sipylum, and in the mints of Antiochus II at Temnos, Myrina, Kyme, and Phocaia. Nevertheless, a group of silver tetradrachms, Athul, king of the legend, probably dated back to Nabis' predecessors Lycurgus and Macanidas, and already showed the iconography of seated Heracles on the reverse and the head of Athena on the obverse. In this regard, the Athena head was inspired by a gold stater of Alexander with Nike on the reverse. It may in fact have reached Sparta via an imitation coin type issued by Antiochus II. So, in conclusion, in the context of the Crimonidean War, Areus put an end to the traditional Spartan ban on coinage and at the same time gave a stimulus to overlook the Lacedaemonian aversion toward monarchy, overshadowing the traditional diarchy. The manifesto of this new politics became the coinage that, in the case of Areus, may be identified as the focal point of his policy of civic renewal. The persistence of the figure of Heracles, also claimed as ancestor by Alexander the Great, in the coinage minted by his successors, and the gradual disappearance of the Dioscuri, traditionally identified with the diarchy, corroborated this new ideal of monarchy until Sparta was dominated by the Romans. Thank you so much.